So Bethlehem has been around since 1742, founded by Moravian missionaries, closed community for most of its first 100 years. So then the question comes, who is the father of modern Bethlehem? Who's the guy who took this little town and turned it into what it is today? And while there are a number of candidates, names that you could toss out there as being the person who had the most influence over what would become the modern city of Bethlehem, there really is one person in particular who did more than any single person to turn Bethlehem from a conglomeration of small boroughs into the city that it became and that it is today.
Charles M. Schwab was born in 1862 and was raised in Loretto, Pennsylvania. His father was a mail carrier and operated a livery stable. Schwab benefited from a college education, graduating from St. Francis University in Loretto in 1877. Schwab began his career as an engineer in Andrew Carnegie's steelworks, starting as a stake driver in the engineering corps of the Edgar Thomson Steel Works and Furnaces in Braddock, Pennsylvania. He was promoted often, including to the positions of General Superintendent of Homestead Works in 1887 and General Superintendent of the Edgar Thomson Steel Works in 1890. In 1897, at only 35 years of age, he became president of the Carnegie Steel Company. In 1901, he helped negotiate the secret sale of Carnegie Steel to a group of New York-based financiers led by J.P. Morgan. After the buyout, Schwab became the first president of the United States Steel Corporation, the company formed out of Carnegie's former holdings. After several clashes with Morgan and fellow U.S. Steel executive Elbert Gary, Schwab left USS in 1903 to run the Bethlehem Shipbuilding and Steel Company in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. The company had gained shipyards in California, Delaware, and New Jersey through its brief but fortunate involvement as one of the few solvent enterprises in United States Shipbuilding Company. Under his leadership, it became the largest independent steel producer in the world. A major part of Bethlehem Steel's success was the development of the H-beam, a precursor of today's ubiquitous I-beam. In 1908, Bethlehem Steel began making the beam, which revolutionized building construction and contributed to the age of the skyscraper. Its success helped make Bethlehem Steel the second largest steel company in the world. Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, was incorporated, virtually as a company town, by uniting 4 previous villages. In 1910, Schwab broke the Bethlehem Steel strike by calling out the newly formed Pennsylvania State Police. Schwab successfully kept labor unions out of Bethlehem Steel throughout his tenure, although Bethlehem Steel unionized in 1941, 2 years after his death. During the first years of World War I, Bethlehem Steel had a virtual monopoly in contracts to supply the Allies with certain kinds of munitions. Schwab made many visits to Europe in connection with the manufacture and supply of munitions to the Allied governments during this period. He circumvented American neutrality laws by funneling goods through Canada. Schwab married Emma Dinky on May 1, 1883. Schwab eventually became very wealthy. He moved to New York City's Upper West Side, which at the time was considered the wrong side of Central Park, where he built Riverside, the most ambitious private house ever built in New York, the $7 million 75-room house, designed by French architect Maurice Hébert, combined details from 3 French chateaux on a full city block. After Schwab's death, Mayor Fiorello LaGuardia turned down a proposal to make Riverside the official mayoral residence, deeming it too grandiose. It was eventually razed and replaced by an apartment block. Schwab also owned a 44-room summer estate on 1,000 acres, 4 square kilometers, in Loretto, Pennsylvania, called Immergrund, German for evergreen. The house featured opulent gardens and a 9-hole golf course. Rather than raze the existing house, Schwab had the mansion moved 200 feet on rollers to a new location to make room for the new mansion. Schwab's estate sold Emergrun after his death, and it is now Mount Assisi Friary owned by the Franciscan friars who administer the adjacent St. Francis University. The golf course, now known as Emergrun Golf Club, designed in 1917 by Donald Ross, is owned and operated by the university. By comparison, Schwab's Bethlehem home, located on East 3rd Street near Fountain Hill, was almost austere. The home had been built by the Linderman family years earlier. Today, it houses apartments,